Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you took the bus or drove, the LinkedIn podcast is back on Sideline Sports airwaves. Took the last week off, had a great vacation. Everything was great out there in Los Angeles. And Lindy is back. So we're here to talk some Eagles, man. The Eagles are 2-0. They're off to a 2-0 start. Got a lot of things to discuss with the team that's been going on the past couple weeks since we had our last show. So, Lindy, what's going on, my friend?
A whole lot of nothing much necessarily new. Just did a couple of chores around the house and whatnot. Got the cars pressure washed and all that. So that was fun. Got to play with a new toy.
Nice. Had a nice
Pressure
productive
washers
day.
are awesome,
then.
man.
Had a nice productive day, and happy Friday to our viewers. So hope everyone is going to have a good weekend. Got some NFL football and some stuff to discuss on the show. Cornerback Avonte Maddox is out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle. Huge hit for the Eagles secondary. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about A.J. Brown and the whole heated exchange with Jalen Hurts on the sideline. How much of a concern is it? The Eagles go on to beat the Vikings, improving to 2-0, and then this week taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have been a surprise team. So we got a whole lot of good stuff for you guys tonight, and starting with Avonte Maddox. And I'll tell you what, man, this guy is a good football player. He's been a good football player since he was drafted. Came in 2018, I believe it was. Him and Goddard were actually roommates for quite some time. So got a close relationship with his teammates, and big blow for the Eagles secondary, man. I'll tell you what, when you look at that slot position, becomes a big question mark. What's going to happen? So, Lindy, where do the Eagles go from here with the injury of Avonte out for the season with a torn pec?
Well, Philly has really nowhere to go but forward. This is a team that we have known throughout the years that is not afraid of battling adversity in terms of injuries to their players. And you take last year, for example, and watching what happened to the defensive line, and we lose Jordan Davis for X amount of games, and they noticed that in terms of production, their run defense wasn't very good. So they bring in guys like Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh to kind of close those gaps on the front. And I think this year there's going to be probably much of the same, depending on how the trade deadline looks constructed in terms of what kind of players are available, who's going to be of a cheaper price tag, who's going to be of a more expensive price tag. I know already people are linking safety Jeremy Chin to us. And I think there's quite a few other players that people have had in mind and trying to bring here. There was that news about Jaquan Brisker liking a tweet about saying how the Bears are trash and whatnot. We'll see how far that one goes. But I mean, Brisker is a Penn State alumni. He's very close to Philly. So I mean, would he be a nice fit in this defense between him and Jeremy? You got two guys playing safety and who are two of one of the premier playmakers for their teams, especially when it comes to the secondary, coincidentally enough. And we have battled back and forth about how good is the safety depth on this team. And, well, Maddox has played safety for us at one point, and he looked pretty good there. But we were at a point in time where we didn't necessarily need him to be a permanent spot in that position group. And in turn, well, he ends up making a name for himself at his spot in the slot. And unfortunately, I don't know how our depth is looking. We got problems in other areas as well. We just lost James Bradbury. He he got out of that Vikings game early because of the concussion issue, and you already seen what happens when you put in guys like Josh Jobe and Mario Goodrich, and there's a clear difference. There's a clear difference because it falls upon your number one corner. Slay's numbers didn't look very good because of how easy it was to target other receivers. I mean, that play to Jordan Addison from Kirk Cousins, the ball was underthrown. I thought Josh Jobe could have made a play on that, and well, it evidently didn't happen. So I'm not going to stress about it. You know, it is only going into week 3. Yes, Avonte is gone, but we have known Howie Roseman to really finagle his way, whether it be through the trade deadline or what other kind of means of seeing the type of players that we have on our roster, just seeing the potential there and who can be elevated. And remember, we brought in CJ Gardner-Johnson last year for the position group of safeties, and turned out pretty well just for that year alone. But yeah, man, we'll see what happens. I think it's too early to stress it right now.
Yeah, speaking of CJ, he's also out for the season with the same injury as Maddox, so pretty crazy over there. I have to say, Maddox, as I said, Maddox is a very good football player. He's been a good player for this team. He is at his best in that slot position. He struggled a little bit
when he stay healthy, though.
When he had to play the outside. But you know what? This is why you have guys on your team. This is why guys fight for roster spots. Your Josh Jobes of the world, guys that have had to work and earn a spot. You got to get better as the season goes on. You know, guys are just kind of like thrown out there. Let's see what these guys have had. Eli Ricks was another guy who had a lot of hype in the preseason. Played very well in the preseason. So these guys are going to get more reps. They're going to get more reps, and they're going to go into games during the week. They're going to go in with more of an expectation that they're actually going to play, when before there really wasn't. So that's the first thing. So I would expect, if worse comes to worse and the slot position becomes a disaster, then don't forget that James Bradbury during training camp was getting a lot of reps at slot. So I think that they did that with the idea that someone could get hurt. Maddox could get hurt. So what happens if Maddox goes down? What are we going to do? We're just going to sign somebody. We're going to bring somebody in. What are we going to do? Well, James Bradbury, he's a good football player. They call him All-Pro James over there. So, good football player.
That's the idea of versatility.
They cross-trade him to the slot position. So, I feel like if it comes to that, they're going to have him play that position. Or they'll move guys around. The defense is going to have to be more creative. Sean Desai is going to have to, create different packages that's going to help the secondary. Lean on this pass rush. You got great players. Let's talk about Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox is turning the clock back this season. He looks amazing out there. Jalen Carter, as advertised. Hassan Reddick, we know it's only a matter of time until he gets going too. So rely on these guys, and I think it'll make the job of the secondary easy. But it's going to come down to adjustments. It's going to come down to the coaches putting these guys in a great position, and it's going to come down to these guys that are not really as well known. Your Eli Ricks of the world, your Josh Jobes, people like that don't really have the experience. How do you get that experience? What better time than now? So somebody on the team is going to have to step up. So those are my thoughts on the injury. Let's move on, and let's talk about some of the events that occurred during last week's win over the Minnesota Vikings. The Eagles improved to 2-0, 34-28 win. But the biggest talk was a heated exchange that took place between receiver A.J. Brown and quarterback Jalen Hurts on the sideline. A.J. Brown looked visibly upset, and a lot of people felt that it was because he was not getting the football. He was not, looking like the A.J. Brown that had 1,500 yards last season, an Eagles franchise record for a single season, by the way. So people were concerned. People were saying, I don't know, like, is A.J. Brown, is he turned into a diva? What's going on? Is this going to be a problem going forward if Devontae Smith continues, to get the most of the targets, which he has so far this season? What's going to happen? So, Lindy, talk to me about this situation and how concerned should the Eagles be about it, if at all?
Do we really have to blow things up like this out of proportion? In all honesty, no. They're trying to say the same thing about Justin Jefferson for different reasons too. So I mean, every receiver, that quarterback to receiver relationship, they're all built about the same. There's a competitive hunger there, and you just want to be that guy to make that play at certain times of the game. And you can get into scenarios where, okay, well, Hertz should have seen AJ on this play at this point in the game, this down and distance, and he didn't look his way, and AJ could have been open, this and that. And so sometimes that builds up over a period of the game, and it's just that, well, you let your frustrations out at the wrong time, and it's caught on live TV and blah blah blah, and that's really the story behind it. But I think it's a shared it's a shared irritation or a shared frustration, if you will, in two teammates, and you have the leader of the offense, and then you have one of his platoon guys, if you will. They're conversing about it. So I mean, I don't take it lightheartedly when it's been said that Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, like these guys are best friends. I don't take that lightly, just because of how much that kind of relationship means on and off of the football field. So I don't think they're the type of duo that one is going to completely blow off the handle and then the other is going to cut them off. I don't see that happening. And just the way the culture for Philly is structured, we don't let those little things that's not the thing that what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't get in our way. We don't let stuff like that get in the way. We settle it on the field. So, and eventually that's what happened after they had that conversation. And well, AJ Brown started becoming a factor because and I think we'll talk about this in the reaction to the Vikings game, but you notice that Brian Johnson did a good job of making the necessary adjustments, and Jalen Hurts didn't have it right away, so he leans on the run game. It starts to work. It provides a cushion, and then Hurts starts to get comfortable, and he's hitting Devontae Smith for over 130 yards with a touchdown, and AJ Brown started to get involved, and just little bits and pieces here and there, but the point is the same, that we just don't see this kind of thing very often for the Eagles. And when it does happen, it's nothing really comes about it. So, yeah, again, this is something else that I'm not worried about just because of the type of people that AJ and Jalen Hurts are with each other.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, just for the record, AJ did respond in a statement yesterday, pretty much saying that it was just a discussion that they were having, and he claims that it wasn't about targets. Some people are going to believe him, some people are not. It is what it is. I have no real reason to believe that AJ is going to cause problems to the team. I really don't. I mean, when you talk about a diva receiver, he doesn't really like have that type of vibe. I think he just wants to. He obviously wants to be great and he wants to compete at the highest level, which is what I think something has to do with what happened. But this guy's not going to do anything to make it about himself. I think he's here and he wants to win football games. So at the end of the day, when guys are not playing to the level that they expected themselves and things happen on the field, then this stuff is going to happen. Okay, this is normal. For anybody that's been around sports or played sports, things like this happens. And it doesn't mean that there's always beef. People just like to overreact to things to social media and go, oh my gosh, like Jalen Hurts is beefing. It's the same as T.O. with Donovan McNabb. It's the same thing again. People are crazy with these reactions, man. I don't think it's going to be an issue. AJ has obviously not been to the start that he probably would have thought he would be at this point, and I think a lot of people would say that for the entire offense, not really just AJ. So hopefully the Eagles get off to a really good start with the offense against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then all this stuff will just be a thing in the past. And then, these guys are gonna be fine. They both got the C on their chest for a reason. They both lead this team in different ways, and they're both huge parts of the team's success. And I think that's definitely going to continue throughout the season. So, am I that concerned? I wouldn't say none at all. Like, yeah, on the surface, it kind of looks like there could be something there, but I would have to say I'm not any higher than like a 1 or a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. So
No.
it is what it is.
I just think it's how the entire situation was approached, because people talk about, when the first game of the year, the first game of the season for last year happened, and it was the AJ Brown show and this and that, and I think it was that Avonte Smith didn't get a single target or catch, and well, I mean, after that game and throughout the rest of the season, people started to understand, and the quarterback talked about it, and he said, that this goes on a game to game, a week to week basis. Not everybody's going to be able to produce the same kind of stats week in and week out. It's how the opponent is going to approach you defensively, and who at that point is going to have that kind of game. And, last year, week 1, it was AJ Brown who had the big game. And then, I think it was, Devontae Smith had it against Washington. And then week 2 was a little bit of everybody, because Quez had a deep ball and AJ Brown was getting involved. Smitty was getting involved. So, I mean, yeah, just like, can we just stop this? We're 2 weeks into this year, and we're seeing a lot of the same things happen.
Right.
But it's now there's now a desire to want to try and escalate things when it's really not that necessary.
I completely agree. So at the end of the day, brothers argue, brothers fight. You can't discount the relationship that these guys have with each other. They're going to continue to compete and fight for each other. So I don't think it's really that big of a deal. So let's move on. Let's talk about the last week's game, Thursday night. Eagles come out, rush for over 250 yards against Minnesota, get a 34-28 victory. And the headline of the game was Mr. DeAndre Swift, the Philadelphia native, the former Georgia Bulldog, coming over from the Detroit Lions in the trade this offseason during the NFL draft, as the Detroit Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. So He was absolutely amazing in this game. The most rushing yards in a game since LaShawn McCoy in 2013 when he rushed for 219 yards against those Detroit Lions in the snow, by the way. So just wanted to throw that out there. Great performance by the offensive line and DeAndre Swift against Minnesota. The offense was kind of looking like it was off to a rough start. It was I really think that the team played very sloppy. If you look at the stats, you're going to see that 450 total yards. But early in the game, defense and special teams forcing turnovers. Turnover, fumble on a punt return by Minnesota. Getting the ball out of Kirk Cousins' hands, getting the ball out of Madison's hands, fumbles, balls going everywhere. It was sloppy, and they weren't really cashing in early. And we're kind of like concerned because, it's like, what's going on? Like, when is the offense going to start to figure it out? And then as the game went on, they adjusted the things, and they figured it out, and they looked a lot better and a lot more in control in the second half. Even though Minnesota was responding, the Eagles responded, especially at the end of that game with that long drive where DeAndre Swift punches it into the end zone. So I think it was a good performance. I think that, no, the team is still not looking like the Eagles from last year so far, but it is a long season. So I have to say they did look better than they did in week 1. Maybe it was only a slight improvement, but it was an improvement. So I have to say you have to take that result. And it's much better to learn things when you're winning. I would rather learn from a win than a loss. I think we can all agree with that. The team is 2-0. So what I expect to happen from here is, all right, Jalen Hurts not playing during the preseason is an issue because, he's not seeing all the plays develop like we're used to seeing him do. And I think it's because he hasn't really played real game action. So not playing the whole preseason, got all this rust and stuff. But I think the rust is going to come off. I think this coming week, and we'll talk about the Buccaneers game here in just a minute. But I think the rust is going to come off, and the offense is going to find themselves. But you have to take the performance. You have to take the win. But definitely a lot of areas the team can improve on from here, Lindy.
I think a lot of I do think some of Jalen's struggles also when you talk about the structure of the offense. I think it's safe to say that Brian Johnson's isn't the same as Shane Steichen's, although I would have to imagine that Brian did adopt some of those play calls from Shane. I mean, being under him and being Jalen's quarterback coach last year. And then I look at the flip side of the coin and I understand this to myself and I think, well, okay, Brian Johnson is an individual that has been in Jalen Hurts in just about all of Jalen Hurts' life. He was around his father, who Jalen's father was a high school football coach. So Jalen grew up with football. Brian, grew up around the family with them. So there is a strong tie there in that relationship. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why is it not translating as fast, if not faster, on the football field when you have this kind of connection that you didn't necessarily have with Shane Steichen? But at the same time, I think, okay, well, this team struggled in similar ways last year for the first few weeks. We're seeing okay, we've already seen the first 2 games of this year. We've seen 1-score victories, and I go to the Eagles' schedule last year, and yeah, I see week 1 we only beat Detroit by 3. I see week 4 in similar conditions to how we played the Patriots with the rain and everything. We beat Jacksonville at home by 8. We struggled against the Arizona Cardinals. We struggled against the Houston Texans, only beating them by 12. Colts was a 1-point game. So Chicago Bears was a 5-point game. And I can keep going on and on. The last game against the Giants, if you even want to count that, we beat them 22-16. But a lot of our first stringers were resting at that point. But I think the premise still remains the same. Just pump the brakes a little bit, and just continue to observe the development of this new offense under Brian Johnson instead of Shane Steichen. And I do appreciate the fact that while I can admit I was not a fan of Brian week 1 at all. I was not. I think he was calling a little bit scared. There was probably a little bit of an intimidation there that you're going against one of the better defensive minds in all of football. And for how long Bill Belichick has been coaching the Patriots and coaching in the NFL, that's a strong task. So you come into this game and you're now going up against defensive coordinator in Brian Flores, who was a head coach at one time for how many years for the Miami Dolphins.
Yep.
And he has been known throughout his career to also be defensively. What I don't want to make. I want to make sure I pronounce this.
Another
correctly.
guy that worked under Belichick as well.
Yes, so another defensive-minded head coach, and in back-to-back weeks, again, that's another strong order. It's another strong task for a first-year offensive coordinator at the NFL level versus the collegiate level. So, is there a little bit of a pass there? Yes. I mean, yes and no. But nonetheless, I look at this game. Okay, the Eagles of last year, they did appear in this game. I look at time of possession, and we beat the Vikings by almost 20 minutes, 39-28 to 20-32. That sounds like the Eagles of last year. Red zone percentage, 3 of 4. You'll take that. But the Vikings were perfect, 3 for 3. There's reasons behind that. Interceptions, Hurts only threw 1. You'll take that because you still won the turnover battle of the game 4-1. You created 4 turnovers. The Eagles averaged almost 5.5 yards per carry under mostly DeAndre Swift. So we've had games last year where we were spectacular in that, a la against the Green Bay Packers at home. Look how many yards we ran for in that game. A couple of the points where I do not like is, well, the team has to clean up quite a few things. They were 6 of 14 on third down. That's in the stretch of the regular season. That's not going to cut it. You're not going to win very many football games that way. That's under 50% like that. That's pretty bad, especially when your opponent goes 6 of 10. Come on. I mean, there's no excuses to be had there. Penalties. You got to stop being floppy. 7 for 45. It was that one sequence where the Eagles created another turnover. Defensively, they create a turnover. We march almost all the way down the field. We get into the red zone. Holding penalty. Jalen Hurts takes a sack. You're completely out of field goal range, and you get no points off of that one turnover. You can't
take that holding call that was against Landon Dickerson. I think that was a bad call. I think there were some bad calls in this game as well.
Sure. But in the context of the moment, those are I think those are things the 2022 Eagles do not do. I think that's one thing they do not do. Did they have their sloppy games last year? They absolutely did. But I think this also compiles onto the point you made about Jalen Hurts not having any preseason action. And
Yep.
going into the regular season last year, we seen him in some of those preseason games. Everybody had eyes on Jalen Hurts. How is he going to improve from 2021? He gets his minutes in, and I think he goes like against the Jets last year in the preseason game. He goes like 9 of 9. He's looking pretty good. He's making good decisions. He's doing this and that, and through the first 2 weeks, he's just not there yet. But all in all,
At the end of the day, man, Jalen Hurts is not. He's not Carson Wentz. He's not. You don't gotta put
that's
him.
Fair.
You don't gotta.
That's fair to put it that way.
You don't gotta put him in bubble wrap. And I understand
No.
you want to protect your guy.
Yeah.
But come on, man. You can let him play a series. You can let him play like 1 or 2 series in a preseason game and take him out. It's not the end of the world. So
yeah.
I think going forward next year, that has to be something that the team allows him to do.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say there's a lot left to be desired right now, especially you're going into week 3 and you're Jalen Hurts and you're sitting at a QBR of 40 right now, 39.7. Not very good from that standpoint, but again, I'd rather see the proper adjustments being made by my coordinator and my head coach overseeing anything to understand that we need to get him in a better rhythm. He needs to start looking like the Jalen Hurts of old from last season, and get everybody on a better page. But do we really have any cause for concern right now? I don't know. I truly don't know. It's just hard to put a finger on.
Lindy, I think there's a difference between concern and panic. I think to some degree, we still have question marks when it comes to Brian Johnson. How long is it going to take for him to figure it out?
Yep.
We're going to have to see.
The evolution of him as a coordinator, yes. Yeah, that's definitely a concern. I was thinking about that as you were saying it. Mm-hmm. Sean Desai, I don't think so. I think he might end up getting kind of that Jim Schwartz treatment in those years where a bunch of injuries were happening and he can only do so much, especially when it comes to the secondary position, because the way they played against the Vikings, in giving up all of those yards, even though the Vikings still lost. When you go up against better teams, per se, and I can say that a little bit. The Buccaneers they're not a sneeze. They're not anybody to sneeze at right now.
Absolutely not.
They're looking pretty good at 2-0. For as many people that wanted to trash on Baker Mayfield, I don't know. They're
great ball right now.
Yes, so they're undefeated under him right now, and we look at it from an offensive and defensive standpoint. Through 2 weeks, the Buccaneers are top 10 in defense. They're 8th in points allowed at 17 a game. But this is an Eagles team that has, averaged 25 plus through the first 2 weeks. So, we'll see what happens on that front. But again, it's that's secondary, man. So, but we'll get into that a little bit more. But close up the Vikings game. I think between week 1 and week 2, we've seen these games last year. So I don't think there's a reason to get any closer to a panic button. But is there cause for concerns in areas? Yes, there certainly is.
Okay, so that's a good way to segue into the last part of our show, where we're going to go ahead and give you guys a little preview of this game. So, as you were saying about Baker, you got to give him a lot of credit. And I'm going to tell you guys right now. Tampa Bay is a good football team. This is not a bad football team, like most of the people assume that they would be. Tom Brady's out the door. What is this team going to do? Because they're pretty bad last year, won the division by default. But I'll tell you what, these first couple of games, team's looking pretty good. Baker last week against the Chicago Bears. I know it's the Bears. Guys passes for over 300 and something yards. He's looking very efficient. He's completing 69% of his passes so far this year. And the defense is playing some pretty good ball as well. Shaquille Barrett, great player. Devin White, great player. They got good players on that side of the ball. They got great players on offense. Mike Evans having a huge year as well as he's looking to get paid. So this is a good football team. All right. And this is a team, we could lose this game if we do not play to the level to the standard, as Jalen Hurts says. This team could catch us off guard. This is what you would call like a trap game. This is going to be kind of a tough environment to go into, I think, because you're going into their house and they're feeling confident. They're feeling like, hey, we're getting off to a good start. We're playing against the Eagles. The Eagles are the reigning NFC champions. This is a good football team we're playing. This is our chance to make a statement that, yes, we're a for real team. We're looking to get 3-0. So this is not going to be an easy game. It certainly won't be. And Mike Evans, the way that he's playing ball, he could cause some issues with us. So I'm glad that James Bradbury was announced that he came back to practice. And as long as everything works out, he is expected to play on Monday night. So having him and Slade together will be a huge boost. And again, Blankenship back as well. He was also back in action at practice. So that's a boost for the Eagles defense, the Eagles secondary. I think what it comes down to is you can't let Baker get comfortable, because I think right now Baker is just playing so confident. He's playing great football and he's comfortable. So you got to make this guy uncomfortable. Okay? We haven't heard Hassan Reddick's name called yet this season, and I think that's going to change on Monday night. I think that Hassan is going to make some plays, and you're going to get pressure on Baker, and he's going to make a couple bad decisions. And I think the Eagles are going to figure it out offensively. They're going to find their flow. And this is going to be a big game. It's going to be a big game. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think in the end, the Eagles are going to figure stuff out, and Jalen Hurts is going to look more like the Jalen Hurts that we're used to seeing, not the Jalen Hurts that we saw the first couple games. And the Eagles are going to get to 3-0, but it's going to be a tough one.
I think in terms of Baker, that's what happens when you get into a well-structured football team as the bona fide starter, if you will. People were thinking, well, is Tampa going to go with Kyle Trask? And no, Baker Mayfield comes in, and he takes the reins and runs with them. And yeah, it's safe to say that Mike Evans is his favorite target through 2 weeks, as he's averaging 118 yards a game. He's not afraid to go to him on the intermediate or deeper passes. I think 2 of his touchdowns were 20-plus yards, so he's not afraid to let the ball go. Baker averaging 245 yards a game. Now, you can try and discredit that to the level of competition that he's faced to this point, and you can do with that what you will. But this guy has been a starting quarterback in the NFL for how many years now? He has gone through how many different coaching changes with the Cleveland Browns. It just never seemed to pan out over there. He tried coming in for an injured Matt Stafford for the Rams. It didn't pan out there.
Played for two teams last year, Carolina, and then getting traded to the Rams.
That too. So he gets another start in Tampa, and well, he's he's just picking up a core of guys that's, that same core is just about there from what Tom Brady used to have.
Yep.
The Mike Evans, the Chris Godwin. You mentioned Shaq Barrett on the defense, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, Vita Vea, Devin White.
We got good players, man.
All of these guys defensively are still there. Offensively, there's been a little bit of changes, but those two core playmakers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are still there. So I mean, in a nutshell, it's allowing Baker to play pretty good football, completing almost 70% of his passes. Like I said, 245 yards a game on average. His QBR is up to a 65. So we know that he can play. But I think the defensive challenge for Philly in this, when we're talking about Baker and how he orchestrates this offense, is they're top 10 in third down. They're ninth in the league on third down at 44%. That's pretty darn good. Where they seem to struggle is in the red zone. They are 30th in the league at 33%. They're only converting on a third of their red zone opportunities, and I think that's an area where Philly can take advantage if they don't allow the Buccaneers to march down the field every possession, like it almost seemed to be that way when we faced the Vikings and had Kirk Cousins throw for almost 400 yards. Again, it's the case where the Eagles defense is making quarterbacks look good, but their team still loses. Go figure. It's another away game. The Eagles are 5-point favorites. We thought that it was going to be tough going into Foxborough. Weather conditions weren't all that great early, but we were still able to pull out a win by 5, 25-20.
So do the Eagles cover the spread? Yes or no?
I think they do. I think it's going to be another one-score game. At this point, I do not see the Eagles winning by more than a touchdown. I think that's going to remain much of the same. Philly has 12 guys on the injury report right now, with a combination of a DNP or guys that are limited at practice. As of yesterday, 12 guys. You mentioned Reed Blankenship and James Bradbury. Those two are still limited between a concussion and a rib injury. Fletch is limited with ribs. Zach Cunningham, ribs. Jordan Davis, ankle. Terrell Edmonds did not practice due to an illness. Kenny Gainwell, ribs. Concussion for Boston Scott. Devontae Smith was limited with a hamstring. Jack Stoll with an ankle. Josh Sweat with a toe. And Quez did not practice due to his hamstring. So this game is definitely riding on the health card here and how healthy the Eagles are going to be going into this game. I'm assuming that they're going to travel on Saturday. So they probably fit in another day of practice today. I think they're going to end up traveling tomorrow. So we're going to see, man. It's going to really come down to how healthy this team is. Who we have at our disposal to make the plays when we need them. But ultimately, I think I'm going to agree with the spread here and say that the Eagles are probably going to pull out another one-score win. They're just up and down. They're still just too talented to give close games away. And that's one thing that they were able to do last year is not give those away. And for the first 2 weeks, we've seen the same.
Okay. Fair enough. I think we can both agree this is going to be a tough game. But in the end, the Eagles can play to the standard that Jalen Hurts always talks about. Then the Eagles are going to come out on top of this game. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have time for tonight. Lindy, before we go, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not that I can necessarily think of, but other than go Birds, Monday Night Football. Let's protect our guys. Everyone's trying to say that there is this like bad luck or bad omen going around about Monday Night Football with how many guys this year being out for the year due to injury, and we just see
the last three
the
Monday night games.
Javon Diggs, yeah.
Last 3 Monday night games.
Not good.
DeMar Hamlin last year, then Aaron Rodgers,
Mm-hmm.
and then Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb, yep.
Yep. So that's tough. So let's hope nothing happens.
It's never good to see the league lose its better players for the season due to injury.
Ah, man, that Nick Chubb injury did not look good at all. So
Dallas loses their top corner, Javon Diggs, and a non-contact injury, ACL. Yep. He's done. It's awful, man. We can say the same for Avonte Maddox. It's bad. So pray everybody stays healthy.
Injuries are part of the game, but yeah. Well, guys, with that being said, as we always say here, Sideline Sports Production, thank you guys for having us on. Also, LinkedIn Nation, LinkedIn Country, let's ride. We will see you next Friday on another episode. See you guys.